just going to give you a quick look at the volunteers program here. This is where volunteers typically help at the National Gallery of Canada. I've got a few people here who have helped, who are current volunteers at the National Gallery. I won't single you out. She looks relieved. We have about 30 or 40 volunteers who work in our library and archives program. They do a variety of things. Federal institutions like the museum, like Science and Tech, like the Museum of Nature, like the Museum of History, are unionized environments, and as such are limited as to what we can offer volunteers. Effectively, the rule is sort of volunteers are value add. They're what we can offer that wouldn't be done otherwise, that we wouldn't pay to do otherwise. So certain work in library and archives, the National Gallery has one of the largest art history book collections in Canada, and we do have about 30 or 40 volunteers that help us maintain that. We have an elementary school outreach program where volunteers go out into schools in the Ottawa area, National Capital Region, and both in Quebec. This is one of our largest volunteer programs. I have about 75 volunteers that do this. I'm currently recruiting for French-speaking volunteers willing to do this. Volunteers go into the classroom. They give a 35 to 50-minute presentation on art history and sort of Art 101. I don't know if many of you have studied this, but part of budget cuts, a lot of school boards have cut art funding, and with budgets not being able to bring people to the gallery, they also end up needing using this to supplement the art history programs they have there. They do elementary school tours for grade 1 through 6 through the gallery, so if you have a junior kids coming into the gallery, docents, volunteers do that. They do docent presentations twice a day, 4 times a day, twice in French, twice in English, on specific works of art. They're called docent talks. They do office help, so big mail-outs and that kind of thing. The very unglamorous volunteer role of stuffing envelopes. There is always room for envelope stuffers. And for special events, things like we just had Art and Craft, which was a TIFF presentation. I had volunteers taking tickets, acting as greeters, that kind of thing. They do conferences and lectures as well. They organize the Wednesday morning lecture series and conferences for various, organize people coming in. They do sort of a book club type thing where once a month a group gets together and talks about specific forms of art. So they do that. Certainly, I know from speaking to Julie, who's with Science and Tech earlier, and speaking to some of my counterparts, other museums and federal institutions offer meteor programs for people who are behind the scenes. I have no volunteers who are really behind the scenes. There are some internship programs, but those are for credit only, but other institutions do that kind of thing. So here's the more interesting thing about volunteers. My volunteers are usually seniors. They're senior women, usually professionals, retired civil servants. Average age is about 72. My oldest volunteer is 91 years old. She volunteers 3 times a week. She does a half day with me, a half day at the National Arts Center, and a half day at the Riverside Hospital. She is in better shape than most people I know my age. And she's lovely, always impeccably put together, comes in and says hello. I have about 150 active volunteers doing a variety of programs. And last year, according to my stats, they gave slightly more than 12,000 hours, which works out to, I did the math at minimum wage, that works out to about $200,000 worth of time and energy. So this is some of the other things that people can get involved with in terms of volunteering. So certainly research, I think Julie talked about that. A lot of research is done by volunteers in federal institutions. You can work with seniors or youth. So this is not necessarily culturally based, but certainly will get you, if you're interested in getting into education, expanding away from the cultural institutions might be worth your while. So if you're interested in working with seniors or youth, you can sometimes as volunteers in some of the community associations and community groups set up art and culture programs there, and certainly that would pad your resume nicely. Marketing and social media, a lot of smaller cultural organizations and theaters, for instance, in music programs, you will be asked to do more marketing. You can do that. In federal institutions and the large institutions, there are paid staff that do this, but if you're interested in marketing and communications, building up your resume and marketing that way, certainly worth your while as well. Event planning, if you want to do a fundraiser. Fundraising is the big one. I don't do fundraising. This is my role. I've done all sorts of things for volunteers, but I will not fundraise, so